So I invite you to step into prayer with me, knowing spiritual presence is all there is. Source, infinite mind. Just as I look around, I see this divinity expressing everywhere, in each of us, in all that is. And so, in this knowing, I accept that I am one with this divinity. I am one with Spirit. Each one of us is an emanation of this oneness. We are here, living and breathing as one. And knowing that all of God's good is flowing through each of us, I know and affirm I am a channel through which God creates. I know the nature of God is love, wholeness, and harmony. And my life, each of our lives, reflects that. Love, wholeness, and harmony. And so I affirm that I look beyond my tears and my fears, and I find my strength in faith. I choose to transform fear, deepening my consciousness of wholeness and oneness with Spirit. I release all limitations. I am standing on holy ground. So just breathe that in, knowing that it's all God, it's all good. And in this knowing, with the deepest gratitude, I know that the love shines as community, as each of us coming together. Wholeness is present in every cell in our body and is here in the words spoken. And harmony is in the music and in our hearts. And with gratitude, I release this into the law, knowing this is our truth, knowing it is. And together we can say, and so it is.
So this whole month, we're talking about intense feelings. It's August, it's hot, it's an intense weather month, yes? And so we're going to talk about some intense feelings. Some of the stuff we don't like to talk about in nice little spiritual communities, okay? But we all have this stuff, right? It was interesting because Craig used the term negative emotions. Emotions are neither positive or negative. They're just emotions, energy in motion, yes? Okay. And so today we're going to talk about using anger as a force for change. And we all have these emotions. Have you noticed? Okay, a little bit, yes. And we were often taught to suppress them as kids, right? In different cultures and different genders, anger is okay, anger is not okay, anger is the only thing you can feel, fear is not, and softness is not, or whatever, right? We get all this conditioning about what's approved, what's appropriate, and what's not. But emotions are just energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion. And so like all energy, they have the power to create or destroy. Yes? Okay. And it's how we direct them, how we apply them, that creates the results. How do we use them? Suppressing them simply leaves the energy within our bodies to seek another way out, which is often disease, yes? Okay? The energy is there. It's going to find a way to express, right? And if I don't let it express in a way that's healthy and appropriate, it'll find other ways. Ernest Holmes says, anger can be turned into love And the very power that has been destroying can be made to build up. And that's what we're going to look at today is converting anger into love. Yes? Okay. So we're going to become alchemists. People who change, the original term alchemist is a person who would change lead into gold. We're going to transform one thing into another. And so since we live in and as a field of infinite love, all the energies that come through us are in motion to express as love. That's like the final destination of everything. That's the final intention behind everything, if we understand it. I'll say it again. Every energy we have is really some form of love in expression. Because love is the only true energy there is. We talk about God is, infinite presence is love. Is love. Not is a loving being, but is love itself. And so everything, nudge your neighbor and say, you are love in form. You are love in form. So we can view anger not as a flaw, not as something to heal and get rid of, but as a sacred indicator, as the soul's alarm bell, awakening us to something being out of alignment. Yes? With the ultimate truth of love, it's out of alignment with the ultimate truth of love, sorry. And so anger is like a high voltage electrical line, right? It has the power to heal or destroy, and you better know what you're doing if you're going to handle a high voltage power line, yes? Okay? So we need to know how to handle it. My grandson comes up every year, and Susan Strobel was kind enough to let us go out on her boat. And the first time that he was up, she let him drive the boat. And the first thing he did when he was driving the boat was grab the wheel and went, boom, 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 It was a disturbing experience. And so I had to kind of, grab him and say, there's a different way to do this. There's a better way to do this that doesn't throw your passengers out or make them seasick, on a very calm sound. And so we all have to learn how to work with our emotions. For those who are familiar with the Coach to Everywhere, for those who have been in one of the classes or workshops where we talk about that, the Coach to Everywhere has a model of a coach being drawn by a horse, and the horse is the emotions. And if the horse is running around all over rough ground, the coach, which is the body, pays the price of that, yes? And so our emotions can run us over all sorts of rough ground if we don't know how to direct them. So Buddhism provides us with some effective tools for handling anger. The first one is mindfulness. Mindfulness. Just paying clear attention to what is. See, often we experience anger as a knee-jerk reaction to something out there, and oftentimes it's when I don't get my way. Anybody besides me? Yeah. When I don't get my way. When this morning I turn on my computer and it doesn't quite do what I wanted to do right away, I feel anger. It didn't do what I wanted it to do right away. Had to breathe. So when we have that anger as a knee-jerk reaction to what's happening outside of us, it throws us into this fight aspect of the fight, flight, or freeze model, yes? We want to fight. That's the anger time. Now, there's times in our history, and there's times today, where that is an appropriate response, but most of today is not. We're not dealing with predators, physical predators that may want us for lunch every single day. Yes? And yet we still have our body hardwired to do this thing. When I feel anger, I do this. And my chemicals flood into my body and all sorts of stuff happens. And that psychophysical reaction isn't appropriate to what we're experiencing, what we're dealing with today. So the best way to handle things that trigger us instead is we can create a little space between the triggering moment, the triggering experience, and my response to the triggering experience. There's a gap that's present between trigger and response. Yes? Okay. And most of the time, if we're not aware, we don't notice there's a gap there that we can insert something into, like a calming breath, like taking a walk. I like the movie Kundun, which is a Martin Scorsese movie from quite a few years ago on the early life of the Dalai Lama. It takes from his discovery, his birth and his discovery, to when he leaves India. And there's a character in there, one of his advisors, who repeatedly says, I'm just a bug. I'm just a bug. In the infiniteness of time, in the infiniteness of space, we're all just bugs. Nudge your neighbor and say, we're just bugs. When we get that perspective, maybe the things we get angry about aren't so big and massive after all. Yes? When that person cuts us off, is that really something that's going to change the timeline of life forever? If we can respond something differently, that might change his timeline, her timeline of life. So taking a breath, mindful breath, or taking a walk to calm the instant response, which the response is usually based on conditioned habits, usually based on the ego not getting what it wants. And that gives us then a space to look more deeply into our perceptions about what has happened, our story. Because have you ever noticed that you've gotten really angry at something and then later on you found that what you thought was happening wasn't? Okay? So we get to take a look at our perceptions, our story, but we have to have that space, that little time in there to do that. And we can take a look at what's happening, and we can also look more deeply into the other person, if it's a person who's upset us, and realize that they're suffering also. Most of the time we do our bad behavior out of our own suffering, yes? Yes? Out of our own ignorance, out of our own misunderstanding. I know none of you have, ever. I might have. To realize that the other person is suffering, and that can bring us to compassion. How can I help relieve the suffering that is happening here between both of us? What can I do? Because that other person may be in reaction, yes? We've all done being in reaction, and we're not real rational when we're doing that, yes? It takes a moment to kind of come back, or maybe it takes an hour, or maybe it takes years to come out of that anger and say, ooh, there's a different way. All this gives us the opportunity to embrace our anger, to embrace it. You know, we're so culturally taught to push it away, not to feel it, or let it run us amok. But there's a balance in between that. Can we embrace our anger, seeing it as a sacred indicator, not as a flaw, not as a something wrong with us? Thich Nhat Hanh uses the image of a wailing baby. He says our anger is like a wailing baby. We've all heard wailing babies, yes? Okay. And what a wailing baby really needs is to be loved, to be held, to be given what it needs, if it needs something. It needs love and attention. And oftentimes just being present with the baby is enough to calm it, yes? Holding it, breathing, walking, helps to calm the baby. It does take paying attention to the fact that you have a wailing baby. Yes? Okay. If we pretend it's not crying, this is our emotion. If we pretend it's not, oh no, I'm not angry. I might be slightly irritated, but I'm not really angry. That's beneath me. I'm better than that. Not you, but you know people. Or if we say it's just a little bit fussy when the baby in the other room, the one down here that we stuck it in, right, is buried and wailing away, we don't truly heal what it needs. We don't give the baby what it truly needs, which is love, which is healing. Many good people, many spiritual people don't want to admit that they're angry and hurting, and yet it's important to do so. It's important to just simply acknowledge, yeah, this is where I'm at the moment. I don't have to stay here, but yeah, this is where I'm at the moment. Breathe through it. Anger is often a cover emotion. It's covering over our feelings of hurt. It's covering over our fear of being hurt again. Yes? So oftentimes at the base of that, of anger, is that hurt and fear of being hurt. the practitioners and I were talking this past Tuesday about our experiences with anger. And one of the practitioners shared that they came to be aware of that their anger is sort of a low-level resentment, and it's about hurt, and ultimately it's about fear. And it's how they cover over fear. Because we're all supposed to be brave and not admit that we're afraid of anything, yes? Breathe. But we are. So when we choose to cover over these emotions, they don't really go away. They're just sitting there in the basement crying away. Yeah? And they're affecting our lives. Physically, emotionally, our interactions with people. Excuse me, and they're still waiting to be heard, embraced, and loved. So as we develop the conscious awareness to be aware of our emotions, and we begin to channel them for constructive purposes. How can I use this? How can I learn and grow from this emotion? Okay? And when we act from anger with conscious intention, we shift from reaction to purpose. Emotionally imbued purpose. Every great social movement in this world has begun with outrage. Outrage. It turns into purpose, but it begins with moral outrage. And if we can stay spiritually grounded while that's going on, even our anger and fury can serve a vision if we hold the vision, if we have the vision, if we know what we really want. And oftentimes when we experience anger, it takes the moment to step back and go, wait, what do I really want here instead? What is it that's really being called forth here in this place? So visionary anger doesn't lash out at other people. It doesn't try to get revenge. It doesn't do any of that stuff. It clears the way. It clears the way towards what we want. Martin Luther King Jr. had a vision, and he had a vision of a loving community. And even when great hurts, even when horrible things were done to that community, to the African American community, he redirected that anger. He stayed true to the vision of a community of loving people of all colors, of all races, of all kinds of people, of all people. He redirected that anger that wanted to lash out and get revenge to align it with the larger vision of creating a beloved community of all people. And he observed that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. One of my favorite MLK Jr. Sayings. So visionary anger looks at a situation and says, this must change. This must change. It's an awareness. If we're not just doing some knee-jerk reaction, somebody cut me off in the freeway, we look at it and we say, what is it that really needs to change? And it might even be that my reaction, my instant response that involves just one finger of a wave, needs to change. Have you ever noticed that when you give that one-fingered wave, oftentimes you get something back? And usually it's a step up. I long ago in traffic, I used to be an angry driver. Linda says sometimes I still am. You should have known me in my teens and my 20s. But I discovered after a while that I wasn't willing to be as much of a jerk as that other person. And so if I started to be a jerk, they would jerk up-level a jerk. I would try to up-level a jerk. And eventually I would sit there and go, this isn't working. And I would have to back out, which is embarrassing when your ego's involved. Okay. So when we are angry, when we have something going on, when we say this needs to change, we start to envision what needs to happen instead of this. What's possible? And the anger, the energy, the motion of energy begins to move us in that direction, using the energy that began as anger to create a higher expression of love, a higher expression of good in our lives, yes? So when we notice something happening and we say, that's not right, we start to create something new. Ernest Holmes called on us to be a people who are for something and against nothing. But it wasn't a call to just simply put our heads in the sand and blindly walk around being, ignoring what's going on, being passive, contented cows. That's not what he was saying. It's a call to move in a direction instead of getting stuck in the eddy, in the whirlpool, the cycle of just anger and pity and justification and all that stuff, yes? and self-righteousness. It's a call to get out of that, to not just live there. To say, what is it that we want to do? Anger shows us what we will no longer tolerate. Yes? When we know something and we're angry about it, it's just like there's something within me that says that's out of line with the highest and greatest good. Vision then shows us what we can dare to create instead. Vision shows us what we can dare to create instead. Our yearly theme of Beyond Our Wildest Dreams, that's what we're playing with for our community for this whole year, calls us to expand to where we haven't been before. Yes? If we're going to go to our Beyond Our Wildest Dreams, then they don't have to change. There's a lovely song from Narayan and Janet that says, all my dreams are waiting for me to come true, for me to come into alignment with my dreams. So we have to expand. We have to grow beyond that. And so we have to, as they say in the old Star Trek, to boldly go where no Center for Spiritual Living of Olympia or no your name has gone before. Yes? Okay? And so to face the things that have held us back individually and collectively, and to create a vision and the energy to go with them, to go beyond what the current situation is. A life without some intense energy is a life of passively, complacently waiting for death. It's just an existence. It's not really aliveness. Yes? Yes. I was just noticing if there was any intense energy to answer that question, right? And it's a life that's waiting for death with no intention of sowing seeds for future generations. So it's good to have some fire in the belly. That's why we sang that song today. When used wisely, when used in support of a vision, that fire both warms us and moves us. As the song said that Levon so beautifully sang, there's a time for all of the elements. Water, air, earth, fire. There's a time for all those. And it's important to know what is being called forth in our lives, what is being called forward in whatever situation that we're in. Fire isn't the only answer, right? If we're always angry, that's not healthy. But if we're always water, we'll just kind of passively flow. That's not always healthy either. So it's knowing how to balance the essence within us, the elements within us, and to fully express each in service of a high vision. And so just like the earth uses fire, earthquakes, volcanoes, all this stuff, lightning, tornadoes, hurricanes, all this stuff to move stagnation out of the way, to move stuckness out of the way, to stir things up, our emotions such as anger move things along in our lives. So let the fire of anger, coupled with vision, move you. Move you. Maybe to places you haven't been before. The nice, trying to pretend to be calm and in control intellect will feel very uncomfortable with this idea. Yes? And in our teaching, we're oftentimes to be taught to be very mental. Yes? But have you noticed there's more than just your mental? You got this thing called a body. It sometimes doesn't work the way you want it to do. We have these things called emotions. All of humanity has emotions. Have you noticed? And a lot of animals have emotions. In fact, it's even been registered that plants have emotions. If emotions weren't sacred, they wouldn't exist. If they weren't part of the divine existence, they wouldn't exist. So for us to hold that back is to hold back part of our divinity, an aspect of our divinity. So allowing our emotions to come forward in a healthy way, in a directed way, not like my grandson going woo, woo, woo with our emotions, but how can I direct this boat where I want it to go? Not bypass difficult emotions, but engage with them as teachers and learn and transform them into greater and higher love. So this week I'm going to invite you to do two spiritual practices. The first one is pay attention to your emotions. Mindfulness is the first step, yes? Pay attention. Just notice what's going on. Instead of using polite, suppressed words to describe them, I'm just a little bit irritated. I'm just a little bit upset. Just honor them. I always love to use the four main emotion, the big four or the big five, depending on who you're listening to, descriptors of emotions. Mad, sad, glad, or scared. Hi, what am I feeling? I'm feeling mad, sad, glad, or scared. Everything else is an offshoot of that, yes? It's a variation of that. It's an expression of that. It's sort of like the primary colors in painting. You can get into the salmon colors or whatever little names we want, salmon like your top there, but they're all still a combination of red, yellow, and blue. Yes, or black and white. Pardon me? Somebody says there's four colors. Well, that's a printer. Thank you, Luke. If you're a painter, which I know you used to be, the three colors are, and black is actually a combination of all those colors. So thank you, Luke. I'll do the talk, though, today, because I know when you're doing emotions, or announcements, you don't like heckling from the audience, right? Love you. So instead of using those polite words, name them, because naming them helps us to become mindful of what we're really feeling and bypassing social conditioning of what we're supposed to feel. If I can honestly say, I'm feeling angry at the moment, it bypasses all that social conditioning that, oh, you're supposed to be a good girl or a good boy and not feel that. But I am feeling that. The second practice is, when feeling angry, take a mindful pause. Take a breath, take a walk, whatever it is. Take a mindful pause, then ask, what is the change I want here? What is it that I really want instead of this? And love that vision into action. Are you willing to play with those two practices this week? Great. All right. I'm going to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes. He says, we all have the ability to transcend previous experiences and rise triumphant above them. But we shall never triumph over them while we persist in going through the old mental reactions. Linda asked at the start, what is new thought? New thought is creating new reactions to our life. We have an affirmation, and join me in this. I channel my anger into sacred, purposeful action. I am not my anger, I am its alchemist. One more time. I channel my anger into sacred, purposeful action. I am not my anger, I am its alchemist. So I am, so it is. Thank you.